October 14th, 1943. 25,000 feet above northern Germany. Frost creeps across the canopy like white veins. The air is thin, biting alive with the constant tremor of engines and flak bursts. Captain Robert Bob Hawkins of the 354th Fighter Group squints into the glare over his gun sight, his gloved hand tight on the control stick of a brand-new fighter, sleek silver and unproven, the P-51 Mustang. The oxygen mask presses cold against his face. Every breath tastes of metal. He can hear the rattle of his wingman's voice through the headset. Red 2 to lead Angels, 2-5 contrails behind at 10 o'clock. Hawkins glances up. 3 dots slide across the high white sky, tiny specks that glint once then vanish. Messerschmitts, the Luftwaffe's hunters. Below, an endless column of B-17 flying fortresses crawls toward Bremen, the target the Focke-Wulf aircraft plant. Hundreds of bombers in rigid formation, black silhouettes drifting over a sheet of cloud. The Mustangs are their shield. But no one, least of all the Germans, believes these small, narrow-winged toys will last 10 minutes in a real fight. 2 years earlier, the P-51 didn't even exist. North American Aviation had offered to design it in 120 days, a ridiculous promise made to satisfy Britain's desperate need for fighters in 1940. The result? The NA-73X prototype looked fast, but flew flat at altitude. Its Allison V1710 engine gasped for air above 15,000 feet. The RAF test pilots called it a fine racer for low altitudes, but not a warplane. When the first Mustangs reached England, German pilots mocked them openly over the radio. "Bring your toy planes again," one Bf-109 ace sneered. "We need more targets for our cadets." They had reason to laugh at first. Back in the present, Hawkins's Mustang slices through the thin air at 310 knots. The cockpit hums with restrained fury. Behind the propeller, the new Rolls-Royce Merlin engine snarls a British heart in an American body. When test engineers fitted the Merlin to the P-51 earlier that year, everything changed. The engine's 2-stage supercharger breathed power into the thin upper atmosphere, letting the Mustang climb and fight where bombers flew. Top speed jumped past 430 mph. Range doubled with drop tanks. The once mocked toy had become a predator. But this is its trial by fire. Red lead to all red elements. Hawkins' radio's voice steady. Stay tight, eyes high. Don't chase strays. Below them, the contrails of the bomber stream twist and shimmer like white ropes across the sky. The sun flares off aluminum wings. Then the first wave hits. Messerschmitt Bf-109Gs dive out of the sun, cannons flashing. The bombers scatter their formation just enough for chaos to bloom. Black puffs of flak blossom around them, each one a flower of death. Hawkins shoves the throttle forward. The Merlin roars, propeller tips snapping at the speed of sound. He yanks back, nose climbing into the attack path. "Red 2 with me, Roger," led. They meet the Germans head-on. Tracers stream across the sky like white comets. Hawkins squeezes the trigger, 650 cal Brownings thunder in unison. The smell of gunpowder floods the cockpit. A 109 flashes past, missing his wingtip by feet. The Mustang rolls inverted dives and snaps into pursuit. The airspeed climbs 360, 380 400 mph. For the first time, the Mustang shows its teeth. "Brake right, Bob, he's on you." Hawkins banks hard. AFW-190A4 sweeps in behind him, 20mm shells tearing past the canopy. The Mustang shudders. One hit takes a chunk from the left elevator. He rolls into a split S, dropping through a cloud. The world turns white, then blue. He levels out at 15,000 feet, heartbeat loud in his headset. Where's that 190 lost him? He overshot. Hawkins pulls up again, spots a flash of black smoke above the 190, trailing flames. His wingman's voice crackles, splash one red lead, the first Mustang kill over Germany. Below them, the bombers turn for home formation, battered but intact. Their gunners report fewer losses than any previous deep strike mission. For the first time, the 8th Air Force's daylight raids have real escort fighters that can stay with them all the way to the target and back. Radio chatter fills the air, Fortress lead to escort much obliged fellas. Copy, big friend. We'll see you to the channel. As they cross the coastline, Hawkins eases back the throttle. The tension in his shoulders melts into exhaustion. He looks down at the fuel gauge, barely a quarter tank left. For the men in the bombers today was survival. For the Luftwaffe, it was a warning. That night, in a Luftwaffe ready room outside Hanover, Major Gerhard Barkhorn slams his glove on the table. The Americans have a new escort, he says bitterly. It climbs like a 109 and dives like a 190. Another pilot laughs nervously. A toy plane, Barkhorn shakes his head. Not anymore. Across Germany, the reports begin to mount. The small silver fighters with the bubble canopies appear farther and farther east, Berlin-Leipzig, even deep into Poland. The old rulebook, the one that said bombers die once they cross the Rhine, is crumbling. In England, engineers at Rolls-Royce and North American Aviation study the combat data. They tweak the cooling system, refine the propeller blades, and improve the gun sight. The P-51B and C models roll off the lines, followed by the P-51D with its famous bubble canopy. Production ramps up to a fever pitch. Within months, the Mustang becomes the backbone of every long-range escort wing in Europe. But on this cold October night in 1943, all Hawkins knows is that he made it home, and that his toy just outflew the Reich's best. He walks across the wet tarmac of Boxted Airfield, pulls off his flight cap, and looks back at the silent, cooling Mustang. Steam curls from the exhaust stacks, oil drips onto the concrete. He pats the nose. Hell of a day, girl. In the distance, the air raid siren of another returning group wails. The war in the air is changing. The Germans just don't know how fast. December 1943. Boxted Airfield, Essex, England. The winter wind cuts across the tarmac, carrying the scent of oil and burned gunpowder. Inside the maintenance hangar, mechanics in heavy coats swarm around the new arrivals. Sleek silver aircraft with a longer nose, broader propeller blades, and a clear teardrop canopy. The P-51D Mustang has just rolled in from North American's Inglewood plant, and its presence hums with promise. Captain Robert Hawkins runs a gloved hand across the fuselage. The metal is cold and smooth, smelling faintly of fresh paint. On the nose, his crew chief has already painted her name in white script, Lucky Lady. "You sure this thing's ready for Berlin?" the crew chief asks, tightening a cowling bolt. Hawkins grins. She'll be the first to see it and the last to leave. Only weeks earlier, the 8th Air Force's daylight bombing campaign had been teetering on collapse. The missions to Schweinfurt and Regensburg, deep strikes into the Reich, had cost hundreds of bombers. Whole squadrons had been ripped apart by Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts that swooped in once the Thunderbolts turned back for lack of range. By the time the bombers reached their targets, they were flying naked. The Luftwaffe called it the Kammhuber Gap, an invisible line over Germany, beyond which no Allied escort could follow. It was the graveyard of bombers. Now the Mustang was about to erase that line. At the 354th Fighter Group briefing, the air smells of coffee and sweat. Maps of northern Germany are pinned to the wall, red strings marking flight paths and radio checkpoints. The commanding officer, Colonel Kenneth Martin, taps a pointer against a line drawn straight to Berlin. "Gentlemen, this is it. Operation Argument. We're escorting the forts all the way to the heart of the Reich. No one's ever done this before." A murmur ripples through the room. Martin continues, "Those boys in the B-17s will be counting on us to stay on their wings from takeoff to target. If they make it, we cripple German aircraft production. If they don't, we lose the air war." He looks around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. The Germans think this plane can't do it. Let's prove them wrong. Dawn. Engines cough to life across the field. The sound builds to a roar as the Mustangs taxi into position, dozens of them tails marked with the red and yellow checkerboard of the 354th. The cold air shimmers with exhaust. Hawkins checks his dial's oil pressure manifold RPMs steady. He glances at the inscription on the instrument panel, Rolls-Royce Merlin 661,695 horsepower. The tower crackles over the radio, red flight cleared for takeoff. Godspeed. Hawkins pushes the throttle forward. The Merlin bellows. The Mustang surges down the runway, tail lifting, wheels slicing through frost. At 120 miles, she leaves the earth. The horizon tilts, the ground falls away, and England shrinks to a patchwork of gray fields below. Red flight form up, Angels 1-0 and climbing, 30,000 feet over the North Sea. The bombers are ahead, glittering like silver beetles in the morning sun. The Mustang formation spreads out above and around them, guardians in the sky. The radio crackles with terse voices and code words. Then faint at first comes the warning, tally bandits. 11 o'clock high. Tiny black dots descend from the glare of the sun. Here they come, Hawkins mutters. F-Tom and BF-109Gs, 24 at least, slicing through contrails like hawks through clouds. Red lead to all elements, engage bandits. Keep the bombers clean. The air explodes in motion. Tracers streak red and white through the thin atmosphere. The Merlin screams as Hawkins banks hard into a climbing turn. He spots a 190 cutting in on the right flank, sunlight flashing off its wings. Got him, he says through clenched teeth. He squeezes the trigger. The Browning's thunder vibration shivering up his arm. Bullets stitch across the German's fuselage. A puff of smoke, then flame. The 190 rolls inverted and dives toward the clouds. Splash 1, his wingman calls. Good kill. Stay sharp. More coming in from high right. The radio dissolves into chaos, shouted bearings, curse words, gunfire. For 10 minutes, the sky above Germany becomes a whirling cage of death. At 25,000 feet, contrails twist into ghostly spirals. B-17s hold formation through walls of flak. The Mustangs dance around them, diving, climbing, rolling. A 109 streaks past, missing Hawkins by meters. He rolls over, snaps onto its tail, and fires. The German pilot bails out, his parachute blooms white against the smoke. Red lead ammo check. 2/3 left, sir. Still good. Then let's give them something to remember. Down below, the bombers release their payloads. Thousands of pounds of bombs tumble toward Berlin's industrial sprawl. Mushroom clouds of smoke rise like black pillars through the haze. The Luftwaffe caught off guard by escorts over their own capital reels. Many pilots short on fuel dive away rather than fight Mustangs at high altitude. When the formation turns for home, not a single fortress falls within sight of Hawkins's group. He exhales for the first time in an hour. Red flight to all, let's go home. As they cross the channel that afternoon, the airwaves buzz with disbelief. We hit Berlin. Repeat, we hit Berlin and came back. In briefing rooms from East Anglia to London, officers lean over maps in stunned silence. The unthinkable has happened. American bombers escorted all the way, struck deep into the heart of the Reich, and returned. The German air defense network, once supreme, has been breached. In a smoky bar near Boxted that night, the pilots drink quietly, exhaustion etched into every face. The jukebox hums low. Hawkins stares at his pint, still hearing the echo of engines in his ears. His wingman nudges him. Think they'll still call it a toy? Hawkins smirks. If they do, it's the kind that bites. Outside, the night sky glows faintly red to the east, the reflection of burning cities. The Mustang had drawn the first real blood over Berlin. And from this night forward, no German would sleep easily beneath an open sky. February 1944. Rolls-Royce Experimental Plant, Hucknall, England. A low rumble fills the hangar, steady and throaty like an animal clearing its throat. Engineers cluster around a test stand where a single engine painted black and silver sits chained to a steel mount. It's a Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 twin-stage supercharged 12 cylinders of liquid-cooled fury. The test officer raises a hand. Ready, a nod. He flicks the ignition switch. The Merlin coughs once, then explodes into life. The sound hits like a physical force, metal on metal fury given shape. The gauges leap 60 inches, manifold pressure, 3,000 RPM. The smell of hot oil and avgas fills the air. A British engineer, Alan Griffiths, grins through his earmuffs. "Gentlemen," he shouts over the roar, "that's the sound that's going to win the war." And across the Atlantic, in factories humming with steel and sweat, an American design waits for this engine, the heart it always needed. The story of the Mustang's transformation begins not in a cockpit, but on a drafting table. In 1940, North American Aviation's team, led by chief designer Edgar Schmood, was tasked with building a fighter for the British in less than 4 months. The result was the NA-73X, sleek, elegant, fast, but flawed. Its Allison V1710 engine gave it speed at low altitude, but beyond 15,000 feet, the power curve dropped off like a cliff. For ground attack, it was perfect. For high-altitude escort, it was nearly useless. British test pilots respected its handling, but dismissed its reach. "A lovely airframe," one said with an asthmatic heart. Schmood knew it too. "We built her wings for angels," he told a colleague, but gave her lungs for moles. Everything changed in April 1942. A group of Rolls-Royce engineers led by Ronald Harker visited Wright Field in Ohio. After test flying an early Mustang, Harker wrote a report that would alter aviation history. This airframe fitted with a Merlin engine could be the best fighter in the world. Within weeks, the first experimental hybrid was born, the Mustang X. It wasn't elegant. The British grafted the Merlin 61 onto the American airframe, rewired the cooling ducts, modified the cowling, and changed the propeller. When it finally took off, no one expected much. Then the pilot, Captain Thomas "Tommy" Hitchcock, pushed the throttle. The Mustang climbed past 30,000 feet like a rocket. The transformation was total. With the Merlin, the P-51's ceiling leapt to 41,000 feet. Its speed exceeded 480 in 30, up 10 miles an hour faster than the Spitfire Mach 9 and nearly 70 mph faster than the Bf-109G. Its range with dropped tanks stretched past 1,600 miles. It could escort bombers from England to Berlin, and back a feat no fighter on Earth had ever accomplished. To the engineers, it was a marvel of math and metal. To the pilots, it was a miracle. At Boxted Airfield, the pilots of the 354th get their first detailed briefing on the engine that makes their new mounts purr. The maintenance officer, Chief Warrant Officer McAllister, leans on a chalkboard sketching airflow diagrams. "Gentlemen, this isn't your granddad's Allison," he begins. "The Merlin breathes differently. 2-stage supercharger, automatic boost control, and a gear ratio that keeps her singing at altitude. Treat her right, and she'll outclimb anything Jerry's got." Someone whistles. Even a 109 McAllister smirks, especially a 109. Outside, the pilots gather around one of the new P-51Bs. The engine cowling gleams, emblazoned with the Packard logo, the American-built version of the Merlin produced under license by Packard Motor Car Company in Detroit. A British test pilot nearby shakes his head in disbelief. "You Yanks took our finest engine and built it faster than we can." "Welcome to America, mate," a mechanic replies with a grin. The partnership is more than technical, it's symbolic. A British engine, an American body, and one shared purpose destroy the Luftwaffe's grip on the skies. By February 1944, the Mustangs begin arriving by the hundreds. In combat reports, Luftwaffe pilots describe them with growing alarm. New American fighter observed very fast, long-range climbs like Spitfire dives like Devil. Cannot escape in dive enemy follows all the way down. In one encounter near Brunswick, a German ace radios frantically, "They're behind us, all the way to the ground." Moments later, his wingman's transmission cuts to static. For the first time, the hunters of the Reich are being hunted. At the 8th Air Force's operations headquarters, General Jimmy Doolittle studies the latest mission summaries. He sees something extraordinary: bomber losses down by half. Luftwaffe sorties dropping. He calls his staff together. "From now on, our fighters are no longer just escorts," he says. "They're hunters. Their job isn't to protect bombers, it's to destroy the Luftwaffe. It's a turning point in air doctrine. The Mustangs are unleashed. Their new mission: seek and destroy." Over the next weeks, the skies of Germany turn into a slaughterhouse. The Mustangs, now flying free of bomber formations, sweep ahead in deadly packs. They dive on airfields, strafe hangars, attack anything that flies or moves. The Luftwaffe, already bleeding pilots from the Eastern Front, begins to crumble under the relentless pressure. At an airfield near Kassel, a young German mechanic writes in his diary, "We no longer fear the bombs, we fear the fighters." In Boxted's control tower, Hawkins listens to Doolittle's new orders come through the radio. He turns to his wingman. "So we're not babysitting anymore." "Guess not." "What are we now?" He smiles grimly. "Predators." That night, the pilots drink quietly in the mess. Outside, the wind rattles the windows. Somewhere over the channel, the sound of returning bombers hums like distant thunder. No one calls the Mustang a toy anymore. The joke is dead. The Merlin killed it. March 6, 1944. Mission 250. The first daylight raid on Berlin. The air above Europe is a frozen graveyard of contrails. The bomber stream stretches for miles, silver fortresses glinting like fish under the pale sun. They crawl eastward at 150 knots, everyone heavy with bombs and fuel. Above them, weaving in restless arcs, fly the new Predators, the P-51 Mustangs of the 4th, 357th, and 354th Fighter Groups. Captain Robert Hawkins checks his fuel gauges, then scans the horizon. The air is crystal clear, the sky knife blue at 25,000 feet. Far ahead, faint black dots smear the edge of the clouds. His stomach tightens. Red lead to all elements, tally bandits. Looks like a full staffel, maybe two. The voice of his wingman crackles back, nervous but steady, copy red lead. "Let's see what the Merlin can do today. And today it will change the war." Until now, the Allies had played defense in the skies. The fighters flew in tight formations, chained to the bombers they escorted, waiting for the Luftwaffe to strike. But General Jimmy Doolittle, recently appointed head of the 8th Air Force, had torn up the old rulebook. In January, he gathered his group commanders in a smoke-filled briefing room at High Wycombe. "Gentlemen," he said, tapping his cigar against an ashtray, "you don't win air superiority by protecting bombers. You win it by killing Germans." The room fell silent. From that moment, the Mustangs were no longer guardians, they were hunters. Their orders range ahead of the bomber streams, lure the Luftwaffe into combat, destroy it in the air, and then strike its bases on the ground. Every mission would be a hunt. Every pilot a wolf. Hawkins pushes his throttle forward. The Merlin responds with a snarl that vibrates through the cockpit. The speed needle climbs 350, 380, 400 pas-en-pas. The Mustang quivers as he dives into the attack. Bandits breaking left. He rolls hard sunlight flashing across the canopy. A flight of Bf-109Gs streaks past, guns blazing at the bombers below. The air fills with streaking tracers, smoke trails, and sudden blossoms of black flak. Red flight break and engage. The sky erupts. Hawkins snaps onto the tail of a Messerschmitt. The German dives, his yellow nose glinting in the sun. Hawkins follows G-forces, pressing him into his seat. The Mustang's laminar flow wings slice through the air cleanly. At 450 mph, the 109 begins to wobble compressibility. The German can't pull out. Hawkins squeezes the trigger. 6 Browning 50 cals roar to life, tracers tearing through the fuselage. The 109 bursts into flame cartwheels once and disintegrates. Splash 1 he calls breathing hard. Above him, contrails twist into knots as dozens of fighters whirl in combat. The sky over Germany has become a living tornado of metal. Elsewhere near Magdeburg, Major George Preddy of the 352nd Fighter Group dives through cloud-leading blue flight. His radio crackles with chaos. "Bogey's 10 o'clock high, I'm hit, I'm bailing." Cover the forts, but Preddy ignores it. His mission isn't defense anymore. "Stay loose," he orders. "Find 'em, kill 'em, and don't wait for permission." Minutes later, his flight rips through a formation of FW-190 as returning to base. As returning, in 2 passes, they shoot down 6. Preddy's gun camera captures a single image that will become iconic, a smoking Focke-Wulf framed perfectly in the Mustang's gun sight. The hunters have found their rhythm. On the ground at Jüterbog airfield, German crews scramble as sirens howl. The sky is full of the shriek of Merlin engines. Mustangs drop from the clouds, guns flashing. Hangars explode. Fuel trucks detonate. A mechanic dives for cover as bullets rake across the tarmac. He looks up long enough to see the squadron insignia, a red-nosed Mustang with a white tail, before the strafing run tears through the line of parked aircraft. Within minutes, the field is a smoking ruin. 22 German planes destroyed without taking off. The Luftwaffe's nightmare has arrived. Back at High Wycombe, Doolittle studies the after-action reports. His staff officers can barely believe the numbers: over 60 enemy aircraft destroyed in one day, most of them on the ground. Bomber losses cut in half. He taps the page with his pen. "This is it," he murmurs. "This is the break." Across the channel, Hermann Göring fumes in his headquarters at Carenhall. Reports pile on his desk: losses, fuel shortages, morale collapse. Pilots complain they're being attacked over their own bases, shot down before they can climb to altitude. In one infamous meeting, Göring snarls, "If I see a single American fighter over Berlin, you can call me Meyer." By week's end, he'll be Meyer a dozen times over. The Mustang's reach grows daily. With twin 108-gallon drop tanks slung under its wings, it can range nearly 1,700 miles. The Luftwaffe's once invincible defensive ring is shredded. German aces like Walter Nowotny and Otto Kittel still score kills, but the attrition is brutal. Every dead veteran is replaced by a boy with 40 hours of flight time. The balance has shifted. In one grim letter to his wife, a Luftwaffe pilot writes, "They come from the clouds and vanish into the sun. We never see them first. It is like fighting ghosts." By April 1944, the statistics are undeniable. The Luftwaffe has lost 56% of its single-engine fighters since January. Pilot casualties are catastrophic. Production can't keep pace with destruction. For the first time, American bombers fly to Berlin in daylight and return with minimal losses. Factories burn oil refineries, crumble rail networks, disintegrate. The war in the air is turning not through luck, not through numbers, but through a machine once mocked as a toy plane. On March 8th, Hawkins's squadron returns from another long sweep. The sun is low over England, painting the runways gold. As his wheels kiss the tarmac, he exhales and removes his oxygen mask. The skin on his face is lined with salt and fatigue. In the debriefing hut, the intelligence officer grins. "How was Berlin?" Hawkins shrugs, sipping coffee gone cold. Crowded. The room laughs, but quietly. Everyone knows what the numbers mean. Somewhere in the ruins of another German airfield, smoke still curls into the sky. The hunters have done their work. That night, under blackout curtains, Hawkins writes a letter home. "We hit them everywhere now: factories, runways, trains. I think they're running out of sky." The boys joke that the Mustang's too pretty for war. Maybe. But I've never seen anything kill so gracefully. He folds the paper, tucks it into an envelope, and stares for a long time at the photograph of his wife on the table. Outside, the Merlin engines of another night patrol rumble to life. The sound rolls across the sleeping base like thunder promising another storm. April 11th. 1944. Somewhere over Saxony, Germany. The sun burns through thin, high clouds as 30 P-51 Mustangs of the 354th Fighter Group glide in formation at 28,000 feet. Below them, the silver river of B-17s winds toward the targets. Messerschmitt's final assembly plants at Augsburg and the synthetic oil refineries near Merseburg. Captain Robert Hawkins checks his gauges, fuel steady mixture, rich oxygen flow, green. The Merlin hums with a vibration he's come to recognize as confidence. To his left, his wingman Lieutenant Jameson grins behind his mask and gives a thumbs up. It's their 10th mission in 3 weeks, and the pattern has become familiar. Climb, escort, engage, destroy, survive. But today, intelligence briefings warned of something different. Luftwaffe radio traffic mentioned Operation Wild Boar. Entire gruppen of fighters were being pulled from France and Poland. They were concentrated for one massive counterattack. The hunters were about to walk straight into the lion's den. At the same moment, far below at Gardelegen Air Base, German pilots scramble across the tarmac. Mechanics tug propellers to life. Engines roar one after another. The air smells of oil and desperation. Hauptmann Adolf Glunz, a veteran ace of JG-26, climbs into his Bf-109 G6, pulls on his gloves, and glances at the squadron board, his 23rd sortie this month. "The Americans will come," he mutters, "and we will be waiting." He knows the odds. His Staffel is half rookies. Most have never seen combat. But orders are orders. As the first flight lifts off, he glimpses another unit taxiing out FW-190 A8s from JG-1. The sky above Germany is about to fill with wings. 20 minutes later, the radar station at Stade crackles to life. Bandits approaching Magdeburg altitude, Angels 27. It's the cue. Hawkins hears it over the Allied radio net. Ground controllers relaying the same data. All flights, multiple contacts inbound. He tightens his harness. Red flight, keep it tight. No solo heroics. The contrails ahead shift and swirl movement at 10 o'clock. Tiny black dots shimmer against the sun. "Here they come," Jameson says quietly. The horizon erupts. FW-190s dive from above, guns flashing. The Mustangs roll to meet them. The sky becomes chaos-white contrails twisting into spirals, black flak flowers blooming between them. Hawkins jerks his stick left, then down. A 190 screams past tracers, slicing the air where his canopy had been seconds earlier. He pulls up throttles to 100% boost. The Merlin howls. Red lead engaging high. He lines up on a 190 rolling out of its dive. The German pilot's wingtips flash yellow. He's one of Glunz's. Hawkins fires short bursts, walking the tracers from tail to cockpit. Pieces of armor and aluminum shear away. The fighter bursts into flames, spiraling toward the cloud deck below. "Splash 1, he calls. "Copy lead, 2 more, coming down your 6. Jameson dives past him, raking 109 with fire. The other latches onto Hawkins's tail. Warning lights flicker. "Hang on, I've got you," Jameson yells. The two fighters spiral down together, the German staying glued to Hawkins. He feels every rattle of bullets along his tailplane. He yanks the stick roll's inverted drops speed. The 109 overshoots. Now he squeezes the trigger. The Brownings speak. The Messerschmitt shudders, wings folding inward. It's gone. Silence returns for a heartbeat broken only by his breathing. Then the radio bursts alive again, multiple bandits diving on the forts. They're hitting the lead box. Hawkins levels off and pushes his throttle forward. "Red flight on me. We're going for the bombers. Below, the B-17 formations are under siege. FW-190s slash through their ranks, dropping belly tanks and firing 20mm cannons. Flames bloom from a stricken fortress. Parachutes blossom in its wake. The Mustangs dive like hawks. The airspeed needles climb 420, 440, 460 mph. Hawkins lines up a 190, making a head-on pass at the bombers. He fires a burst. The German explodes before reaching them. Good shooting. Keep them off the forts. The sky is alive with fragments, burning planes, drifting chutes, broken contrails. For 20 minutes, the air war hangs in equilibrium, the disciplined precision of the bombers against the desperate ferocity of the defenders. Then slowly, the balance tilts. The German radio network collapses under jamming. Their fuel gauges drop into the red. Many must turn home. The rookies panic. A few dive away toward the clouds, pursued by Mustangs that seem inexhaustible. Hauptmann Glunz fights on alone, his 109 climbing hard toward the bombers. He sights one, fires and hits, but his canopy fills with smoke. A Mustang flashes past red nose, yellow band. A burst of tracers tears across his wing route. His engine seizes. He bails out, drifting in silence as the thunder fades. Below him, Germany burns. At 30,000 feet, Hawkins reforms his group. Count off. 2 here, 3 low but okay. 4 missing parachutes sighted east of Magdeburg. He nods, throat tight. We'll find him. The radio fills with bomber chatter. This is Fortress Leader, thanks little friends. We still got all 4 engines. A tired grin spreads across Hawkins's face. That's what we're here for. Back at Boxted that evening, the debriefing room smells of sweat and coffee. The intelligence officer writes numbers on a chalkboard. Enemy destroyed 41. Bombers lost 8. Fighters lost 5. The ratio is staggering. Colonel Martin shakes his head. You boys tore their heart out today. The pilots sit in silence, exhaustion etched into their faces. Jameson lights a cigarette with shaking hands. Sir, he mutters, I think their heart's still beating. But not for long. Across the channel, Luftwaffe headquarters confirms the nightmare. In one day, 150 German fighters lost, many on the ground. Fuel reserves critical. Experienced pilots nearly gone. General Gallen's report to Goering is blunt. The Americans now dominate the sky. We cannot stop them. For the first time, Berlin's factories are defenseless. That night, Hawkins walks along the runway under a pale moon. The Mustangs stand silent, wings gleaming faintly with frost. He runs his hand along Lucky Lady's nose, still warm from flight. He whispers, We went to hell and back today, girl. Somewhere far away, fires still burn over Saxony. The hunters are now the masters, and the Luftwaffe, the once untouchable spear of the Reich, is bleeding out beneath the wings of a machine they once called a toy. May 12th, 1944. Over Leipzig, Germany. The sky above Saxony trembles under the weight of thunder. Not from weather, but from the roar of hundreds of engines. 500 B-17s and B-24s crawl east at 25,000 feet. The formations so vast, they cast shifting shadows on the clouds below. Above and around them, their silver-gray guardians weave in restless arcs, the P-51 Mustangs of the 357th and 4th Fighter Groups. Captain Robert Hawkins flies lead in Lucky Lady, her nose streaked with soot paint chipped from countless missions. His wingman Jameson yawns into the mic. Feels quiet today. Hawkins answers without looking up from his gauges. Too quiet. He's right. The silence doesn't last. A voice crackles across the radio. Tally bandits, Angels, 2-7, eastbound, lots of them. In seconds, the horizon fills with movement, black dots climbing fast from the haze below. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, nearly 200 strong, clawing their way toward the bomber stream. It's the Luftwaffe's last stand in the west. 6,000 feet below, at Altenburg Airfield, A desperate order blares from loudspeakers. All available fighters, airborne, immediately, defend the fuel plants at all cost. Young pilots sprint across the tarmac. Some have flown only 6 hours solo. Mechanics wave them off with hollow smiles. A sergeant mutters they're sending boys to die in men's machines. The Reich is running out of both. Back in the stratosphere, Hawkins tightens his oxygen mask. Red flight, keep high cover. Don't dive unless you've got an angle. The bombers hold steady black flak bursting around them in slow motion blossoms. Then the Germans break through the clouds, 40 F-190s in V formation, followed by dozens of 109s behind them. The Mustang squadrons peel off to meet them. Engines scream. Contrails whip into tight spirals. Red lead engaging. Hawkins yells, shoving his throttle forward. The Merlin bellows pure metallic rage. He pulls into a climb, rolls over, and dives headlong toward the attackers. The sky collapses into chaos. A Bf-109 streaks past his canopy, sunlight glinting off its gun barrels. Hawkins fires a burst, nothing. He pulls tighter G-forces, crushing him into the seat. The German rolls, drops away, and Hawkins follows. At 450 mph, the Mustang holds steady. The 109 shudders airframe, screaming. The German tries to dive, but the Mustang stays glued to him. Hawkins squeezes the trigger. 6 Brownings tear through the 109's spine. The canopy flies off. A figure ejects. Splash 1, Hawkins calls, voice flat. Around him, radio chatter overlaps. 2 on my tail. Brake left, Jesus, they're everywhere. Above, the contrails twist like smoke in a furnace. At 27,000 feet, Major George Preddy's Blue Flight slices through the melee. His group slashes into a pack of FW-190s climbing for the bombers. Hit the high ones first, he orders. Make them flinch. The Mustangs dive in perfect synchronicity. Tracers converge. 3 190s ignite before they can even jettison their belly tanks. The survivors scatter and the Americans pursue. Down through the bomber stream, past flak bursts into a maelstrom of shattered aluminum. Keep going, Preddy shouts. Push 'em all the way down, and they do. For the Luftwaffe, it's a massacre. Years of attrition and fuel shortages have taken their toll. Many German fighters barely reach altitude before running dry. Maintenance crews strip parts from wrecks to keep a handful flying. The aces who once ruled the sky, Hartmann, Barkhorn, Rahl, fight alone among swarms of terrified cadets. At 10:42 a.m., a 109 pilot radios. Keine Munition, keine Benzin, no ammunition, no fuel. He's never heard again. By noon, the German formations collapse entirely. Dozens dive away toward home, chased by Mustangs that seem tireless. Below, the bombers release their payloads over the synthetic oil refineries, factories that feed the Luftwaffe's heart. Black columns of smoke punch through the clouds. Fire blooms across the earth like wounds. When the bombers turn west, the Mustangs form up around them. Not a single enemy fighter remains in sight. The radio is eerily quiet now, punctuated only by the monotone hum of engines. Red lead to all flights status. Replies come one by one. 2, okay. 3, bingo fuel. 4, missing. Hawkins exhales, rubbing the sweat from his eyes. We'll look for him on the way out. Back at Altenburg, the scene is carnage. Burned-out fighters litter the field. Parachutes drift down like white ghosts. A mechanic sits amid the wreckage, staring at the sky. So many, he whispers. So many Mustangs. Above him, one wounded Bf-109 limps overhead, trailing smoke. Its pilot lands, hard wheels snapping. The aircraft bursts into flame. No one runs to help. They've seen too much of that. At dusk, the surviving Mustangs cross the channel. The English coast glows faintly under the setting sun. Hawkins and his squadron glide down to boxed engines idling low. The air smells of salt and victory. As his wheels touch the runway, he can almost feel the exhaustion of the Merlin beneath him. He taxis to the revetment and shuts her down. The silence rings in his ears. Jameson walks over, removes his helmet, and grins weakly. Still thinks she's a toy. Hawkins shakes his head. No, Jim. She's the hammer of God. That night in Berlin, a secret meeting unfolds in a bunker beneath the Reich Air Ministry. Albert Speer lays down the new production figures. Fuel output has dropped by 90%. Synthetic plants destroyed. We can't replace the losses. Goering pounds the table. You're telling me the Reich's air arm is finished because of one American plane? Speer's voice is quiet. No, Herr Reichsmarschall. Because of thousands. The next morning, Allied intelligence intercepts a desperate Luftwaffe communiqué, request immediate fighter reinforcements for Reich defense. Current strength insufficient to oppose P-51. There will be no reinforcements. The Luftwaffe has entered its death spiral. In a letter home that week, Hawkins writes, "We hit the oil fields today. Smoke so thick you could taste it through the mask. They threw everything at us and broke. It's over for them, though they don't know it yet. The Merlin never quit. Neither did we." He folds the page, seals it, and stares out the window toward the hangars. Outside, mechanics work under floodlights, patching bullet holes, refueling, rearming. The war moves on. But for the Luftwaffe, the end has already begun, brought not by bombers or generals, but by the small, sleek machine they once laughed at. June 1944, southern England. Dawn breaks over the white cliffs of Dover. The air hums with tension. Across the fields, rows of P-51 Mustangs stand wingtip to wingtip, their silver skins glinting beneath streaks of gray sky. Ground crews hurry between them, loading belts of .50 caliber ammunition, checking hydraulics, topping off the drop tanks that gleam beneath each wing like polished tin. At the far end of the line, Captain Robert Hawkins and his wingman Jameson climb the ladder into their cockpits. The control towers crackle with static. A single code word rolls across the airfield like a drumbeat Neptune. The invasion of Europe has begun. From 8th Air Force headquarters to the smallest airfield in Kent, the message spreads: Allied troops are crossing the Channel. The Mustangs will fly cover for everything that moves: bombers, transports, thunderbolts strafing the beaches, even C-47s dropping paratroopers into Normandy. Hawkins settles into his seat, adjusts his oxygen mask, and listens to the whine of the Merlin as it starts. The sound is familiar, comforting, metallic thunder wrapped in rhythm. Boxted tower to red flight cleared for takeoff. Good hunting, boys. The throttle slides forward. The runway rushes beneath him. The Mustang leaps into the sky like a living thing. Below, England falls away, replaced by the cold expanse of the Channel. Dozens of ships form an armada that seems endless: destroyers, transports, landing craft, each one leaving a white wake in the gray water. "Look at that," Jameson whispers. "We're watching history. History's only good if it survives," Hawkins replies. As the formation crosses into French airspace, the radio explodes with voices. Flak over the beaches, heavy transport hit near Sainte-Mère-Église. All escorts engage enemy aircraft approaching from the east. Hawkins banks hard south. In the distance, black dots sweep toward the invasion fleet. FW-190s, fast, angry, desperate. Red flight break and attack the Mustangs dive. The sky becomes a storm of motion. Tracers slash through the clouds. Flak bursts bloom in dark flowers over the coast. The German fighters dive on the landing zones, cannons spitting, trying to claw open the fragile beachheads. But the Mustangs are faster. Hawkins pulls the trigger. The Brownings roar. A 190 bursts into flame wing, shearing away. Another twists into a dive. The air smells of cordite and salt. Splash one, good hit. Lead more, coming in high. Roger, climb and roll. Let's drive them inland. For 30 minutes, the air war over Normandy rages at knife range. The Mustangs dart and weave, turning the sky into a deadly ballet. Below, the beaches of Utah and Omaha flicker with muzzle flashes. LSTs unload tanks. Soldiers wade ashore through surf and chaos. A P-51 streaks over the sand, no more than 50 feet above the water, its exhaust leaving twin white trails. The infantry below look up and cheer. At 10:20 a.m., Hawkins checks his altimeter, still 8,000 feet. He's chased the Germans as far as Cannes. Red lead, we're low on ammo. Copy, form up and head west. He banks toward the channel. Below the invasion, Armada stretches to the horizon, shimmering like steel. For the first time in the war, Allied troops fight under an unbroken canopy of friendly air power. The Luftwaffe has failed to appear in strength. Its remnants are scattered, exhausted, and hunted from the sky. Back in Berlin, the news hits Goering like a hammer. His staff delivers the report. At noon, enemy invasion successful. Our fighter response was minimal. Losses catastrophic. He slams his fist. Where were our fighters? An aide answers quietly. They never made it. The P-51s were waiting. The Luftwaffe's last illusion of control dies that day. In Normandy, the Mustang's legend grows by the hour. Troops nickname them angels with wings of silver. Pilots sleep in tents beside their aircraft, flying 3, sometimes 4 sorties a day. They escort C-47s, bringing reinforcements, then dive-bomb trains and convoys retreating inland. By June 10th, the roadways of France are littered with burned trucks and blackened tanks. Each sortie stretches farther inland past Cannes toward Paris, then deep into occupied Europe. The Mustang's range makes every mile of conquered ground feel closer to home. That summer, the Luftwaffe begins to vanish. Fuel reserves collapse. Pilots can't train. Squadrons fly once a week, if at all. Those that rise are cut apart within minutes. A German colonel writes in his diary, "The Americans own the air. We fight in shadows, and even there we are not safe." In the ruins of an airfield near Reims, a captured German pilot tells his interrogator, "Your little silver plane. We called it Teufelsvogel. Devil bird. It never stops." At Boxted, Hawkins receives the next mission briefing, deep strike escort to Munich, nearly 1,000 miles round trip. He traces the red line on the map with his gloved finger. That's farther than anything we've ever flown. The operations officer shrugs. It's what she's built for. Hawkins grins. Then let's see if the old girl's got one more miracle. 2 days later, as dawn breaks over southern England, the P-51s take off again, engines roaring. They pass over the wreckage of the Third Reich. Below them, broken rails, silent factories, and airfields reduced to black scars on the earth. The once mighty Luftwaffe is gone. Inside his cockpit, Hawkins looks east and thinks of how far they've come from an underpowered toy mocked by German aces to the spearhead of Allied air dominance. He keys the mic voice, quiet but firm. Red flight eyes open. "Let's finish this war." The Merlin answers with a rising growl, and the Mustangs sweep forward, unstoppable, untouchable, and immortal. July 7th, 1944, 30,000 feet above Bavaria. The world below burns. Columns of smoke rise from shattered cities, Munich, Regensburg, Nuremberg, turning the horizon gray. The bombers have already passed through, leaving behind a landscape of ash. Now above the wreckage, the duel for what remains of the Luftwaffe begins. Captain Robert Hawkins steadies Lucky Lady at 25,000 feet. The sunlight glints off the canopy, scattering across his dials. His wingman Jameson is tight on his right. Their call signs crackle through the static red lead, Red 2, checking in. "Roger, Red Flight. You're cleared to sweep Sector Hotel 5. Bandits reported at Angels 27. Hawkins looks towards the eastern horizon. Black specks shimmer against the sky. He squints. Got 'em. 10, maybe 12. Looks like 109s. He thumbs the transmit switch. "Red Flight, we're going in. Line abreast. Let's see if these boys can still dance." The Merlin growls as he pushes the throttle to the firewall. For the German pilots waiting above, this is not a mission, it's a last stand. Major Johannes Mackie Steinhoff leads 12 Messerschmitts from JG-77. His canopy is cracked from a previous engagement. His instruments flicker with electrical faults. He knows the odds. Remember your training, he tells his men. Pick one target, fire once, then dive for the deck. Don't turn with them. Ever. But the young pilots, 1819, have never seen combat. Their voices tremble. Herr Major, there are too many contrails ahead. He sighs. Then make them fear you just once more. He dives. The two formations collide in a storm of metal and smoke. Hawkins rolls left tracers slicing past his canopy. He jerks, the stick feels the G's crush his chest. Break right A10 across his nose. He rolls inverted fires. The Browning's spit fire tracers arc through the thin air. The Messerschmitt explodes in flame. Splash one, Jameson's voice cuts in. Two more coming in from high 7. Hawkins pulls hard, twisting into a climbing spiral. The Merlin roars, propeller tips screaming at near supersonic speed. He rolls out behind one German and fires again. The rounds rip through the cockpit. The enemy pilot never bails out. Got another. Jesus, Bob Jameson mutters. How many's that now? Enough. But they keep coming. In the melee, Major Steinhoff spots the red-nosed Mustangs below. He dives lines up his gun sight on Hawkins. He fires nothing. Cannons jam. He curses, switches to MG-131s, fires again. Bullets rake across Hawkins's tailplane. Warning lights flare. Red lead, you're leaking. Copy, I see it. Still flying. Hawkins rolls, climbs, and cuts behind his attacker. He sees the black cross on the 109's wing, the yellow rudder, and Ace's markings. He squeezes the trigger. Tracers rip through the German's right wing root. The Messerschmitt bursts into fire, trailing smoke. Steinhoff ejects. As he drifts downward, he watches his fighter spiral into the forest below. He murmurs, it's over. By noon, the battle is decided. 20 German fighters destroyed. 2 Mustangs lost. The survivors turn for home exhausted and silent. For the Luftwaffe, this is one of the last battles over the Reich. Within weeks, fuel shortages will ground entire squadrons. At Augsburg, mechanics drain alcohol from de-icing systems to use as fuel. Training flights drop to 0. Young pilots are handed a pistol before takeoff. If your plane runs dry over enemy lines, use this. The Reich's air arm disintegrates. In England, the victory reports pour in. At High Wycombe, General Doolittle scans the daily summaries, bomber losses below 5%, kill ratios 20-1. He smiles faintly. We've bled them white. His aide hesitates. Sir, they'll still fight. Doolittle nods. They will, but without air, they'll crawl. He looks out the window toward the horizon, where vapor trails of returning Mustangs sketch silver lines across the clouds. That is the sound of the Reich dying. That evening at Boxted, Hawkins steps out of the debriefing hut. The sun dips low, turning the runway to gold. Jameson brings 2 tin cups of coffee. To the sky we own, he says. Hawkins clinks cups. To the ones who never made it back. They drink in silence, the kind only men who've seen the world on fire can share. At 10 p.m., the loudspeaker announces Mustang groups claim 68 victories, bombers all home. The cheer that follows is subdued. Triumph in this war is never pure. Later, as Hawkins walks past Lucky Lady, the moonlight glints off her scarred fuselage. He runs a hand along the rivets, still warm from the day's flight. He whispers, "You did good, girl. Real good." In the distance, thunder rumbles another storm forming over the continent. The war isn't over yet. But the sky, for the first time since 1939, belongs to freedom. August 1944. Germany. The land below is a quilt of craters and ruin. Rail lines lie twisted like broken spines. Cities smolder under a veil of black smoke. What once was the industrial heart of Europe now beats faintly, if at all. Above it all, in the thin air, where only the strong can survive, the P-51 Mustang reigns. Captain Robert Hawkins flies point over Magdeburg. He's logged nearly 300 combat hours now, 3 times what most pilots survive. His Mustang Lucky Lady bears kill markings beneath the canopy, 13 black crosses, each one a memory. The mission today isn't about glory. It's about suffocation. Destroy everything that moves, trains, trucks, aircraft on the ground. He levels out at 8,000 feet, scanning the horizon. A German locomotive puffs smoke across a stretch of track. Red flight. We've got a runner. Let's clip his wings. The formation drops into a shallow dive. The Merlin howls as he lines up the shot. Tracers streak towards the train, hammering the engine. Steam erupts from the boiler, and the locomotive bursts into white flame. Direct hit, Jameson cheers. Save your ammo. Hawkins warns. We've got miles to go. They skim the treetops, strafing convoys, airfields, depots. Smoke trails follow them like ribbons. The smell of cordite and scorched oil fills the cockpits. From the ground, the Merlin's roar becomes the sound of death. A farmer outside Kassel writes, "You can hear them before you see them. The silver ones. They appear out of the sun, and the world explodes." At the same hour, in a bunker beneath the Reich Air Ministry, officials study the latest fuel reports. Aviation gasoline production 3% of January levels. Operational squadrons 12% strength. Pilot losses catastrophic. Goering slams a report onto the table. "We cannot even train replacements." Albert Speer answers quietly. "The Americans have destroyed our fuel, our factories, and our future. There is nothing left to fly." Above them, Mustangs sweep over Berlin itself unchallenged. In the cockpit of Lucky Lady, Hawkins glances at the fuel gauge, nearly empty. Red lead to Boxted control, mission complete. Returning west. Tell the cooks to save the coffee. Static. Copy that, red lead. We'll keep it hot. He smiles under his mask. The horizon ahead glows faintly orange, the setting sun beyond the channel. Behind him, Germany burns. As the Mustangs turn for home, they pass a sight no one expected to see. Below, hundreds of B-17s stream eastward unescorted. There's no need. No German fighters rise to meet them. "Empty skies," Hawkins murmurs. "Never thought I'd see that." Jameson chuckles. "You made it happen." "Not me," Hawkins says. "All of us. And her." He pats the dashboard of Lucky Lady. The Mustang has become more than a machine. It's the symbol of dominance, the promise that no soldier would ever again die for lack of air cover. Across Europe, the war below grinds on. Paris is liberated. Columns of Shermans roll east, always under the protective wings of Mustangs. Every bridgehead, every advance, every supply line owes its safety to the silent vigil of the fighter groups above. In letters home, GIs write of angels with the silver wings. To them, the P-51 is both guardian and omen, the herald of inevitable victory. But for the men who fly them, triumph tastes like fatigue. In Boxted's ready room, maps are dotted with red pins marking every destroyed airfield. Colonel Martin enters holding a dispatch. "Listen up. We're assigned to long-range recon for Market Garden. Deep strikes into Holland and Germany." Jameson whistles. "Sir, we're going to run out of sky before we run out of range." Martin smirks. "Then find some more." That night, Hawkins sits beside his Mustang. The hangars hum with welding torches. He lights a cigarette, staring at the stars reflected on her fuselage. "They laughed at you once. Called you a toy. I guess no one's laughing now." From across the field, another Merlin starts deep and rhythmic, the sound of victory. By autumn, the Luftwaffe is gone. Trains run only at night. German troops march in darkness, terrified of the sun. When asked what changed the war, General Doolittle answers simply, "The Mustang made everything else possible." It's not poetry. It's truth. As September dawns, the 354th receives orders for a final sweep before the Allied advance crosses the Rhine. Hawkins glances at the words beneath the canopy, "Lucky Lady." One last dance. The engine starts with a growl, the sound of an empire dying. He throttles up. The wheels leave the earth. The sky once ruled by eagles now belongs to the silver bird, born of laughter and disbelief. And for the first time in 5 years, the sun over Europe rises without fear. January 1st, 1945, Western Germany. The new year dawns in smoke and frost. Allied columns crawl east toward the Rhine. Engines churn through snow. Above them, the winter sky is pale cold and deceptively quiet. Then out of that quiet, the Reich makes its last move. At dawn, hundreds of German aircraft, Bf-109s, Fw-190s, and Me-262 jets, roar off in Operation Bodenplatte, a desperate strike on Allied airfields. Their mission: destroy the invaders' air power in one final blow. At Boxted Airfield, Captain Robert Hawkins is already awake. The coffee in his tin mug has frozen solid. He's reading a letter from home when the sirens begin to scream. Enemy inbound, all squadrons scramble. He drops the letter, grabs his flight gear, and runs. The flight line erupts in chaos. Ground crews dive for cover as bombs crater the perimeter. Fw-190s streak overhead cannon fire, ripping through parked aircraft. Flames lick across the snow. Hawkins and Jameson sprint to Lucky Lady. Come on, Hawkins shouts as his crew chief yanks the chocks free. The Merlin coughs, sputters, then catches a heartbeat of hope. Red flight, this is red lead taking off under fire. The Mustang surges forward through smoke and debris, tracers bouncing off the tarmac. Hawkins jerks, the stick lifts off barely 50 feet above the ground. Gear up, Jim. Let's clean up the mess. At 2,000 feet, he spots them, dozens of Fw-190s sweeping over Boxted, their wings flashing in the winter sun. Below, hangars burn. Mechanics drag wounded men from the wreckage. Hawkins pulls into a climbing turn. Red 2, we've got company, brake high. Jameson rolls inverted, diving through the chaos. A 190 flashes past, fuselage striped black. Hawkins yanks back the stick, the Merlin howling. He fires. Tracers rip across the German's wing route. The 190 disintegrates in a burst of fire debris tumbling through the snow. Splash 1. Another flashes past, then another. There are too many. On the radio, panic and discipline collide. Watch your 6, they're everywhere. Christ, those jets, what the hell are they? Hawkins sees it, a silver streak slicing through the sky faster than anything before, the Me-262. It screams past at over 500 mph, twin engines leaving a ghostly haze. Red lead to control. We've got jets in the area. Repeat, jets. Roger, red lead. Engage if able. He snorts. If able, he mutters. That thing's gone before we can blink. Still, the Mustangs adapt. Minutes later, another Me-262 dives on the airfield. Hawkins banks left, anticipates climbs, and meets it head-on. The Merlin screams in defiance. He fires a burst. A lucky hit, tracers puncture the 262's left engine. Smoke gushes out. The jet wobbles, trailing flame. You got him, Jameson shouts. Got lucky, Hawkins says, but it bleeds like anything else. By noon, the attack falters. The Luftwaffe loses over 300 aircraft in one morning. The cost is catastrophic. It is the last gasp of an air force that once ruled the continent. At Boxted, fires burn, but the runways stand. Mechanics drag wrecked fuselages off the tarmac. A chalkboard reads, "Enemy aircraft destroyed, 16. Own losses." The balance is absolute. That night, the squadron gathers in the mess hall. Smoke and engine oil hang in the air. They threw everything they had, and we're still here. Hawkins nods. Yeah, but did you see those jets? They were fast, too fast. Colonel Martin overhears. Doesn't matter. They've got no pilots, no fuel. He's right. Even the miracle of jet power can't save an air force that can't afford to fly. By February, the Reich's skies are barren. The Mustangs fly without challenge. They range to Prague and Vienna, strafing rail lines and airfields untouched since 1939. One afternoon, Hawkins's flight finds a lone Me-262 on a frozen runway near Neuburg. Its pilot stands beside it with hands raised. Leave him. He's done. As they climb away, he looks down at the jet glinting below the future, grounded before it ever took flight. March 1945. Cologne falls. The Rhine crossings begin. The Mustangs fly overhead, their shadows stretching over the river bridges. For the ground troops below, their presence is a comfort deeper than any sermon. Every time the silver wings pass above, we know we'll live another day. By April, Allied forces stand at the gates of Berlin. The Luftwaffe is gone. The sky is silent except for the hum of Mustangs overhead. On April 16th, the 354th flies its final combat mission escort for bombers striking the last resistance outside Berlin. No enemy aircraft rise to meet them. Hawkins flies at 20,000 feet, looking down at the city once feared across the world. Fires burn in the streets, the Spree River glitters with wreckage. Hell of a view, Bob. Yeah, hell of a war. They turn for home. For the first time, no one looks over their shoulder. The air belongs to them now and to history. May 8, 1945, Boxted Airfield, Essex, England. The morning breaks strangely quiet. No engines, no sirens. No mission briefings or fuel trucks crawling across the tarmac. Just a soft wind and a distant radio repeating the words everyone has waited years to hear. This is London. It is officially announced that the war in Europe is over. Captain Robert Hawkins sits on the wing of Lucky Lady cup of coffee cooling beside him. For the first time since 1943, he has nowhere to be. The silence feels heavier than the noise ever did. Around him, the base begins to stir, not with urgency, but disbelief. Ground crews emerge from hangars, still wiping grease from their hands. Mechanics stare at the sky as if expecting bombers to appear out of habit. A few men cheer. Some cry. Most just stand still. The war that built them is gone. Jameson walks over, grinning like a man who doesn't know how. So that's it, huh? We actually did it. Hawkins nods. Guess the Merlin finally ran out of things to kill. They both laugh softly, then fall silent. Nearby, the squadron's flag is raised halfway, then lowered and furled. A bugle sounds thin, lonely final. When it fades, someone begins to sing, "We'll meet again." Others join in voices rough with smoke and memory. In London, Winston Churchill speaks, "This is your victory. You are the ones who brought us through." In Washington, President Truman praises those who ruled the skies. And in a Pentagon office, a memo circulates, subject continued production of P-51 aircraft, approved for peacetime and post-war roles. The Mustang will outlive the war it ended. At dusk, Hawkins wanders the flight line. Dozens of P-51s stand wingtip to wingtip, paint dull gun ports taped over. Each nose art tells its own story, Miss Dallas, Queen of Hearts, Sweet Lorraine. Every one a ghost in silver. He stops by Lucky Lady. The kill marks are faded, but each one still feels personal. "You made it," he whispers. A mechanic approaches. "Captain, word is we'll start shipping them back to the States next week. Some will be sold for scrap." Hawkins chuckles. "She deserves better than that." The man shrugs. "War's over. World doesn't need heroes made of steel anymore. Maybe not. But the world wouldn't exist without them." That night, a bonfire burns behind the officers' mess. Empty fuel drums glow red in the dark. Pilots gather, raising toasts to the friends who didn't return. Jameson lifts his glass. To the ones who came home on wings and the ones who didn't. Hawkins adds, "And to the plane that got us here." The men nod. Someone tosses a shell casing into the fire. It hisses once and vanishes. In Germany, the last Luftwaffe fragments surrender. A young lieutenant hands his sidearm to an American officer. "You always owned the sky." The officer nods. "Because of them," he says, pointing upward. Contrails drift across the clouds, white scars that fade slowly like memories of war. In the months that follow, Europe begins to breathe again. Mustangs no longer carry guns, they carry mail supplies and dignitaries. The same engines that once roared in fury now hum in peace. Children chase after the departing planes laughing. To them, the Mustang is freedom with wings. Autumn 1945. Boxted. Demobilization orders arrive. Hawkins and Jameson are going home. As they pack, Jameson nods toward Lucky Lady. "You gonna buy her? Heard they're selling some for farm work." Hawkins laughs. A war horse pulling a plow. He hesitates. Maybe she deserves to rest too. When the transport truck pulls away, the Mustangs gleam in the sunrise, silent, proud, eternal. As the bass fades, Hawkins leans his head against the window. He still hears the Merlin's song deep in his memory, courage, speed, survival. He whispers, "Sleep well, lady." The world moves on, but the legend does not. In the years that follow, Mustangs serve again in Korea in air races. Pilots decades younger climb into their cockpits, touch the same switches, and feel the same pulse in their hands. They all say the same thing. "She talks to you." And somewhere in that deep mechanical heartbeat, the ghosts of 1944 still fly. Spring 1946. Mojave Desert, California. The sky is blinding blue, empty and endless. A single silver shape cuts through it. It's a P-51 Mustang, one of the few still flying. Major Robert Hawkins tests surplus aircraft for peacetime service. Below, the desert stretches like an ocean. The Mustang banks, low engine, singing its familiar song. Hawkins grins behind his goggles. For a moment, the war seems close again. Berlin's smoke, the scream of tracers. But now there are no bomb craters, only silence and freedom. He lands smoothly on the dry lake bed. The engine winds down. A young test engineer jogs over. "How's she handle, sir?" Hawkins wipes his brow. "Like she always did. Smooth, honest, a little mean if you're careless." The engineer nods. "Jets will replace her soon." Hawkins smiles. "They probably will. But I'd like to see one of those jets make a kid look up and smile." He gazes at the horizon. No machine had more soul. By 1946, the jet age begins. The Gloster Meteor and P-80 Shooting Star rewrite the rules. The Mustang becomes a relic overnight. Yet she still flies Canada, Sweden, Australia, guarding a fragile peace. In Israel and Indonesia, she becomes a symbol of independence. Everywhere she goes, the legend follows proof that freedom can be built from aluminum willpower and belief. 1948. Berlin again, a battlefield of ideologies. A colonel points to a P-51 photo. "That plane gave us this city back." A young pilot asks, "You think a prop plane changed the world?" The colonel smiles. "It didn't just change it, it gave it back its sky." The decades pass. 1951 Korea. Mustangs fly again, strafing T-34s instead of Panzers. 1953 Peace. A few come home. Many don't. Then they fade into museums and hangars. But the sound never fades, the throaty hum of the Merlin echoing across generations. Boxted Airfield, 1965. The old base is overgrown. Hawkins, now gray-haired, returns for a memorial dedication. A plaque reads, "To the 354th Fighter Group, the pioneers of air superiority." Beneath it, they called it a toy. It ended a tyranny. He smiles. In the distance, a collector starts a restored P-51. The Merlin growls to life, echoing across the empty field. The crowd falls silent as the plane lifts off, silver wings flashing in the light. Hawkins whispers, "Welcome home, lady." In Germany, a museum curator arranges a new exhibit, Luftwaffe relics, and a polished nose panel marked U.S. Army Air Forces, P-51D. A visitor asks, "Why show the enemy's plane?" The curator replies, "Because history is built by those who fly toward the fire." By the 2000s, few Mustangs remain airworthy. Yet each summer, their voices return at air shows, memorials, and flyovers. Crowds look up, veterans stand silent, children cheer. For a brief moment, everyone feels it again, the courage, the freedom. 1983, Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. A journalist asks what made the P-51 special. The historian smiles. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't the guns. It was timing. The world needed a miracle, and it showed up with wings. Late in life, Hawkins writes his memoir, The Sky We Took Back. In its final chapter, he recalls his last flight in Lucky Lady. No flak, no enemies. Just me and her climbing into the sunset. I shut the engine down. The world went silent. For the first time, I could hear my own heartbeat. We fought not for victory or revenge, but for quiet. The kind you earn. Today, one of the last Mustangs, P-51D Lucky Lady, hangs in the Smithsonian gleaming under soft light guns, sealed propeller still. A plaque reads, "Dedicated to all who fought for control of the sky." Once dismissed as a toy, she became the sword of freedom. Children pressed their hands to the glass, staring at the ghost that changed the world. Outside, a plane crosses the sky contrail, fading into light. And somewhere in that whisper of air and memory, the echo of the Merlin lives on steady, defiant, eternal.